I'm Maria Scheibengraf, and this is SEO in 2025.
Maria, what's your number one SEO tip for 2025?
In your international SEO efforts, do not think of translation and SEO as separate tasks performed by separate professionals. Only dual-wielding professionals can apply both skill sets simultaneously to maximize your results.
Dual wielding. Okay, that sounds painful. Why does translation and SEO need to be the same task?
Because only by integrating them can you achieve what you're setting out to achieve in your international SEO campaigns. You want content to resonate with local audiences in every market that you try to penetrate, and you want to take into account how people search in each market, which is heavily culturally coded. If you have a team of SEOs that do not understand the nuances of translation, localization, and the impact of culture on search behavior, and you've got a translation team that doesn't understand the basic principles of SEO, you will have a very disjointed approach to international SEO that will cost you dearly further down the line, not just in terms of budget, but in terms of all sorts of resources.
Okay, a very disjointed approach. I mean, what really actually happens? What's the ultimate result if these tasks aren't tackled together?
There is a misalignment and a mutual undoing of effort between the SEO team and the translation team. There are conflicts, there's friction, there's unnecessary back and forth because each party is focusing on what they know how to do best without considering that the other team has crucial input to bring to the table. So translation that is done without sufficient consideration of SEO and SEOs that do not take culture into account will lead to very well optimized content that's going to be ineffective or linguistically accurate, but not bringing conversions, not bringing traffic, and not doing what it's supposed to be doing from SEO perspective.
Got you. So it's not about translations, it's about creating something that is appropriate for the language, the culture of the markets that you're trying to compete in.
Exactly. There seems to be a misconception that international SEO and SEO translation is all about localizing or translating keywords, and that's it. And it goes so much more beyond that. Actually, SEO translation is a misnomer. We should be calling it SEO localization because we're working with more than just translating words. We're considering cultural differences and local search habits because we want the content to resonate with the target audience. So what I see is currently being doing a lot in SEO translation efforts is lists of keywords that are taken from the domestic SEO research and just translate it literally and then insert it into translations without thinking that sometimes you just need a different keyword altogether, a different angle to the text. You sometimes need to get rid of whole sections, rewrite some of that. As a quick example, if you've got a pest control company, you're selling pest control products, or each region is going to be searching for your product using very probably the name of whatever creature is bothering them in their area. So pests are not the same across regions, so they will not be searching in the same way, and you need to consider that. Same with women's clothing. A country that dresses very modestly is not going to be looking for micro bikinis, are they? So you need to consider culture to see what terms they're using and how they're trying to find the content that you're trying to offer to them.
Or maybe for wearing in their own homes, you never know. So, okay, great point there. Do you think that applies across sectors or across many different business types, or are you only highlighting a few examples that it's more of an acute issue for?
I've seen it happen everywhere, across industries, across company sizes, and it stems, in my opinion, from these businesses. I can think of 4 main reasons behind it. So the main reason is that these companies tend to lack localization maturity internally, and they're not very aware of what international SEO entails. So they choose to outsource to a translation agency that claims to know how to do multilingual SEO, SEO localization, etc. these agencies are not actual specialists. So they are mis-selling the service a lot of the time as an add-on to a core translation service instead of an integrated approach. And they are also failing to hire the right professionals who have both skill sets. So they're providing inaccurate and incomplete advice, and businesses do not know any better. This all results as well in allocating insufficient budget to the whole effort. So that's why I think it happens. And this derives in a very flawed workflow where SEO is just sort of pushed into a traditional translation workflow. And that just doesn't work. You need your own custom SEO localization workflow to get the results that you're after.
So you're saying that in an ideal world, then you should be looking for an SEO possibly even based in the market that you're targeting, but also actually understanding all the culture or the nuances of that particular market so they can take charge of the content as well as the technical side of things.
Yeah, so ideally you want to begin with linguists who are properly trained in the SEO beyond how to do multilingual keyword research. So you want linguists who know about technical SEO, who know about user experience, who know a lot about SEO. And then you want SEOs who are bilingual and you want them working together. If you can find a linguist who is also an SEO, then you've struck gold. But that is very rare to find. There are not many out there.
It's different skill sets, isn't it? I mean, it's creative with technical, which is perhaps impossible to find, as some people might say.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's not impossible. But if you can't find them, then you want a team where your SEO is bilingual and is based in market, like you said, and you want the linguist to have sufficient SEO training and you want them working collaboratively.
Got you, okay. So what aspects of SEO do people who are translation specialists commonly miss out on?
Everything from user experience considerations to how to make a text skimmable, to how to properly localize meta titles, meta descriptions, href lang tags, alt text, technical SEO things that will mean that they might approach the translation to the text differently. If a section of the original text is too long, for example, and is not broken up into sufficient subheadings, and they don't know how to improve that in their translation, then that quality error will be carried over into the target language, etc. So that's very typical. I've also seen, because there's many linguists who claim to be specialized in SEO and they aren't, but what they can do is they can find equivalents for keywords when they receive a list of keywords, but that's just not enough. And I've been asked to review these lists many times, and I've seen that they cannot spot that two seemingly different keywords are actually variants of the same one. They end up with 2 pages that are optimized around basically the same keyword, the same primary keyword, which is cannibalization at the end of the day, just because there's an extra preposition in one of them or something like that. So there's no knowledge of semantic search. There's no knowledge of all the improvements that Google has been making over the years to make SEO more about meaning than about keywords.
So in terms of the best way to make sure that a translation is correct for a local region, do you really need someone on the ground there that's doing the work there? Or can you perhaps have the article translated relatively cheaply and then perhaps use another online service to find someone in that local region just to check the translations, just to make sure that they're absolutely right for that local area? Or is that still a little bit too cheap?
That's wasted resources. You're going to end up spending double because whoever's reviewing will want to redo the work based on what they consider to be important according to their skill set. That's likely to be met with some resistance from the original person who did the translation. This back and forth, this friction, and as a marketing manager, or whoever is in charge of this process, a lot of the time you really don't know who to hear, whose voice to trust. So it's just better if you leave it in the hands of someone who can do it all, or in the hands of a team who can combine their skills to produce a final product versus trying to cut corners, which always ends up in wasted resources and time.
And when you're localizing content, I guess you also need to bear in mind local search engines as well, because not everything's going to be Google centric. Perhaps there are going to be other algorithms in that local marketplace that Google is overseeing anyway. So do you also take in mind local search engines and algorithms when optimizing for that local audience?
Well, yeah, before I mentioned the flawed workflow that the translation agencies tend to follow, the main bit missing from such workflow is the lack of strategy. So you cannot begin this work without a proper international SEO strategy. And that involves consideration for lots of things, not just local search engines, but also local UX. UX is heavily culturalized. So usability conventions and design elements and fonts and colors, how users interact with a page, where do they expect to find the CTA button, even like the internet access in the region, how fast is your page going to load in Cuba versus other countries, local activation campaigns, are you going to run any? It is so much more beyond just, are we going to optimize for Google or Baidu or Yandex? It's several factors, and they all need to go within an ISEO strategy, an international SEO strategy, with a sub-strategy per local market that you're aiming for.
So what key metrics do you need to keep an eye on to determine whether or not your localization efforts have been successful?
Well, you should be tracking the same KPIs that you're using for your domestic SEO, but a very crucial one, because you want to make sure that your content, your translated content, is resonating locally. What do we mean by resonating locally? It is eliciting the right emotions that will lead to conversion. The thing is with emotions is that they are culturally coded. And how do you know that those emotions are getting elicited and that your content is engaging? Well, there are several KPIs that will point to that, such as time on site and bounce rates and engagement and the click-through rate, and not just impressions, not just position tracking, but how the users are responding to that. So if you see those metrics start to fall down or conversely to do better, it tends to be a reflection of how well localized your content is.
And I'll have to bring the big elephant into the room, AI. Does AI not mean that all this work that we have to do with localization at the moment is going to be unnecessary in a couple of years' time?
AI works with words. And us humans work with so much more than words. We work with cultural knowledge and concepts and critical thinking, and realizing that this way of wording this product's feature is not going to fly with a local audience. I mean, AI is a tool, right? We all use it. And if you've got an expert using AI, then it's an incredible tool. But AI by itself will not do it. And also, let's assume that in a hypothetical world, AI is good enough to replace us. When it comes to languages, models are much better trained in English than they are in many of the other languages. So AI itself is really, it really underperforms in minority languages and even in Spanish, that's my native language. Spanish is a majority language. And AI it's still not as good in Spanish as it is in English. So there's a long way to go before we can get worried about AI replacing us and before clients can get hopeful about it.
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2025?
You should just find an agency to outsource to that is truly specialized in both SEO and linguistics and localization, that leave it all in their hands. But first, you need to make sure that they are following the right workflow, which includes strategy, includes technical SEO, and includes people with both skill sets working collaboratively. If you know that they're doing that, just leave it all in their hands and they will be saving you resources and time. You want a cost-effective and efficient process, and that's the only way to achieve it, unless you've got the capacity and the time internally to be doing it yourself.
Maria Scheibengraf is a Spanish marketing translator and ISO specialist at Crizo's Translation Services, and you can find her over at crizotranslations.com. Maria, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2025.
Thank you very much.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2025, the book, over at SEOin2025.com.